What's up, everybody? Izzy again, back with another Q&A. Today, I did make an informational reel on Instagram about how to calculate machine moment arms and how to use the hammer strength plate-loaded lunge to do a adjusted strength curve deadlift. Check that out if you want to. First question. Thoughts on Andrew Tate? Here's the thing. There's some people who like Andrew Tate, but I just don't understand. He seems like a raping piece of shit. There's an actual voice recording of him saying that he enjoys it during sex when women don't enjoy what he's doing. Even if it's all fake, what is interesting about what this guy has to say? It's like basic over-the-top red pill stuff. Like if you took some guy who believes that always win and you made him into a real life meme character designed to spark emotional responses and get as many shares as possible, that's who he is. He's not even a real dude. He doesn't even have real opinions. He's playing the social media game and winning at that. It's not a unique alpha take to say that get more chicks. Cringe. Honestly, if you use words like alpha and simp and beta unironically, you're not just kidding and making fun of memes, dude, get off the internet for a while, man. You need a break. You need to go back into the real world and get some sunshine. You need to start talking to people at places other than Reddit. You need to have interactions with women that aren't at bars and clubs so that you can remember that there's normal people and that the whole world isn't dominated by sexual market value and that not every single woman cheats and that not everything comes down to height, money, and looks. You need a break. Which athletes do you look up to? I don't really like the language. Look up to? I mean, they're not gods. They're just people. It's really no secret that Kobe Bryant is one of my favorite athletes, if not my favorite athlete of all time. And I think guys like that serve as inspiration for me. Dorian Yates would be a guy in the bodybuilding world, where I look at their mindset and how they approached getting better, and it's something for me to imitate, to draw inspiration from, to use as a muse, to use Kobe's own words. But looking up to somebody is another thing entirely. Maybe Muhammad Ali, and the reason why I say that is I think the truest judge of character is what you do regarding your beliefs when you're actually faced with a decision between what you believe and what's best for you. And when that dude was faced with a decision between what he believed and what was best for him, he chose his beliefs. He chose not to fight, and he lost everything for it. And to me, that's very admirable. Do the triceps actually hypertrophy from back movements? So the triceps long head is going to assist in adduction, right? So any movement where you're pulling the elbow backward toward and behind the body. So think of pullovers or even pull downs with a close grip. It will work to some degree. In my experience, I don't think, it is a synergist, but it's probably not close enough to failure to get a ton of hypertrophy unless you're relatively untrained in the triceps long head. The one exception to that I will say is pullovers. Depending on how you do pullovers, your triceps long head can get very pumped doing that and can definitely be, if not the primary limiting factor, it can certainly be a secondary limiting factor. So that will again come down to technique. But it is true to some extent that your long head is trained by back and pulling movements. So I still include direct tricep work for the long head, but there is some work being done there. What's the deal with elbow sleeves? Should I have elbow sleeves for hypertrophy? So elbow sleeves are just like knee sleeves as far as hypertrophy goes. If your elbows tend to hurt, then a loose elbow sleeve, which keeps your elbows warm and sweaty, can potentially relieve pain there, can keep inflammation lower, and that can be a net positive. But if you don't have elbow pain, they serve no purpose whatsoever. And if you're getting carried away and getting super tight elbow sleeves, which actually help you lift more weight, then what you're doing is you're taking away tension in the most lengthened position and transferring it to mid-range and lockout, which is not a great idea for hypertrophy, because we know that hypertrophy occurs best when muscles are forced to generate force from their maximally lengthened position. So you wouldn't want to be using equipment like tight knee sleeves, like tight elbow sleeves, like knee wraps that take away tension in that lengthened position. Do most people who quit lifting continue with the habitual high micronutrient intake diet? Dude, how many people do you know that quit lifting as a conscientious choice? And it wasn't them falling off the wagon. Most people who quit lifting so that they can drink beer and eat more pizza. Like they've like fallen off of a good habit. I really don't personally know anybody that lifted very seriously for like 10, 20, 30 years. I guess maybe besides like Dorian Yates, but you talk about an exceptional individual. Like I don't even have like anecdotal. I don't have one anecdote for you on this. Not one. I don't think this is a common situation. What is the best way to learn split squats and lunges? I can't seem to get the movement down. Well, if you've already tried to teach yourself from internet-based tutorials and you're failing to do so, the next step is for you to hire a coach that can walk you through it one-on-one and troubleshoot whatever problems that you're having. Didn't you say that your mom could have been a billionaire? Why didn't she take the opportunity? What happened with that was that my mom was one of the first 300 employees at Microsoft. So right before the company basically blew up, she retired to travel the world and spread the good word of Jesus. And I don't mean like they went to Cabo. Her and my dad were both heavily involved in church and church life. They went to Africa, Asia. They literally traveled the world for many years, proselytizing, spreading the gospel. And eventually things didn't really work out with that church, and she had to go back to work. And she went back to Microsoft anyway. So if she just would have stayed at Microsoft the whole time, because of how early she got in, her shares would have been worth hundreds of millions of dollars at one point. I don't know about $1 billion. I think that might be an exaggeration. But it is true that if she had not retired, she would be worth hundreds of millions. If we are trying to limit caffeine intake, especially in the late afternoon, should we also avoid green tea? Caffeine questions always are going to have some sort of individuality to them because people have different tolerances, and there's even like different genes that have been identified which can control how fast you metabolize caffeine. Like the half-life is literally 8 hours for some people and 4 for others. So that all plays into it. But I would say yes, if you're having issues with caffeine, don't have green tea in the late afternoon. What is the appropriate amount of time to hold an extreme stretch, a weighted stretch? There is absolutely no research on this whatsoever. We've just recently in the last year gotten research to even prove that this works. So you have to, for this particular piece of information, rely on practitioners, people in the trenches who have been doing this. And for example, traditionally in DC style programs, weighted stretches are held for 60 to 90 seconds at a time, progressing in both weight and time. So when you can get 90 seconds, you use a heavier load for the next go around. How do I evaluate whether to use drop sets or rest pause as an intensity technique? Personally, I just don't see a lot of utility in drop sets on most movements. The main reason why I don't like drop sets is because unless you're doing a single joint isolation movement, a lot of the times it introduces cardio as a limiting factor. Like if you ever try to do a hinge or a squat or a leg press, anything that has any sort of loading on your back with a drop set, you won't be able to catch your breath in time to do another effective set. The other thing that you have to concern yourself with is if you're using an intensity technique as a means to not use more straight sets, like you've already done 3 or 5 sets on a given movement and you're training with close proximity to failure, you have to worry about whether or not you're using enough weight to actually get an effective stimulus. You know, if you already had to drop the weight for your 5th set and now you're doing a 2 or 3 set drop set where you're dropping like 10 to 15% each time, it becomes really hard to stay over 30%. Ultimately though, it comes down to SFR. Is neck training a bad idea if I'm overweight? So here's the thing. Actually, somebody DM'd me recently and said that if they played a drinking game where you had to take a shot every time I said, so here's the thing in the Q&A, you'd get fucking blackout every time. And now I can't stop thinking about that whenever I say, here's the thing. Anyway, you know what, man? Like, I just think neck training is corny. I just, if you're doing like 5 or 6 sets of neck training a week, right? That's 5 or 6 sets of something else that you now no longer have time for. And you don't have like infinite systemic recovery resources. Why spend it on your neck? Why not biceps or something? Are you a good coach? I mean, what do you expect me to say to that, man? Fellas, here's the situation, right? You're at a bar, you're at a club, whatever. The most attractive lady that has ever shown interest in you is about to go home with you. And she goes at the last minute, are you good in bed? And you unsarcastically start blabbing on about how terrible you are and how you're not going to be able to get the job done and you're not going to be able to get her there. I honestly Have no idea how that situation would play out. I almost would love to see it, just from like an intellectual curiosity standpoint. But let me tell you one thing right now. That is not how I would play that situation. So am I a good coach? Well, I've been doing it for 10 years. Lasted this whole time. I think I'm pretty good. Is it a bad thing to never have friends and never socialize if you have no desire for it? I am not a neurology expert, man. You could be neuroatypical, you could be on the spectrum, and it's totally possible that you have like a zero level threshold for socialization. There are people who in this world who exist who any form of socialization stresses them out. Now, that is not, like I said, typical neurology, though. Most people have social needs, and if you operate below those social thresholds, they tend to become depressive. So, again, I'm not an expert, but if you are having some sort of struggle with fulfillment and happiness, it might be worth talking to a mental health professional about this, like somebody who actually knows what they're talking about, because I only have a very broad, like 50,000 foot level understanding of this stuff. Ultimately, if you're happy and fulfilled, what's more important than that? What specifically makes you say you don't have the genetics to win a pro show? I'm sorry. I can't help but laughing because it's kind of like if somebody asked me like, wait, why are you sure that you can't make it to the NBA? Because I can't run, I can't jump, and I can't play basketball very well. There's not one genetic quality that you would need for bodybuilding that I have that's sufficient to compete on that level. The smallest waist measurement I've ever had, even at like 5% body fat, is 31 inches. I have a wide hip structure for my height, narrow collarbones, but at the same time, like wide wrists, wide knees. I don't have the propensity to put on like enormous amounts of muscle mass. That would have been clear after 4 years of cycling already. I might have the psychology, but that's just about it, man. It's just that obvious. I overdid deadlifts 3 days ago. I had a rest day after, but today and yesterday's workouts sucked. I feel totally fatigued. This is only second week of meso. Also, IDKY, I went to failure on a bunch of last week when I was only supposed to do 3 RIR. Me. What should I do? Dude, you made me take 25 seconds just to read the question. This isn't your diary time. This is the Q&A. Take a recovery half week and get back on track, and next time stick to your program. Don't be a number one. All right, friends, we've arrived at the end of the video, so you know what that means. If you like the video. Questions and comments, leave them below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Enjoy a funny dog photo, and have a nice day.